And I'm gonna teach you.
A lot of madness has been talked about the word debate. I don't know why that has struck fear in so many people's hearts, the word debate. It's a very, very simple word. It actually means conversation in a sense. And this is a very simple conversation to have. It's about truth. It's about facts. And so beyond the truth and the facts is a bunch of opinions and layers of nonsense that I really shouldn't get involved with, and I truly don't have time for. So let's just stay focused on factual information. This is not a character assassination of any sort. This is just factual, true information that is. All right, so we're gonna walk through this together. The first thing that you need to know is that Tone Talks didn't bring up the word debate. Nobody brought up the word debate but me. And I guess the debate was the trigger word that started all of this. Now, going forward, I do want to mention a few things first that we definitely need to address. The title to the video was initially, "You Are Not My Equal." And I guess a few hours later, they had a change of mind and they changed the title to "How I Made $10 Million" or something like that. But the original title of this video was definitely directed to invoke, just by the nature of the title itself. You know, if you title something "You Are Not My Equal," I mean, that statement needs no explanation. It is what it is.
I'm gonna teach you about SEC filings and compliance. I'm gonna teach you about entrepreneurship. And I'm gonna teach you about true transparency. And I'm gonna teach you why those who have never done it should shut their mouth.
First and foremost, I don't think that's the type of attitude that you should take with a potential investor. I also don't think that I should have to say that. It's a point that I keep having to drive home with some people, and I don't think they understand it. So let me put it to you this way. To add further perspective, there is a key man clause where he's directly tied himself to the fund. And you have to realize that the fund has a risk that is predicated on whether or not this guy has a good day every day. And you have to think about the attitude and the mentality of someone who speaks to you like this as a potential investor and say, what is he really going to do in the business world if this is how he reacts to social media comments? Again, what makes it strange is he directly speaks to me in the beginning of the video about Metro Atlanta entrepreneurs that he could call out, knowing that we had just spoken on social media just hours before this.
Here in Atlanta, there's some names I can call out to some local entrepreneurs here in Atlanta who are posting on their snaps talking about our fund, and there's some names I can call out of people with less platforms than I on social media and on YouTube followings who want to leverage us to get popular and clout chase and clout chase and clout chase and
ended the conversation on peaceful terms. So much, in fact, that I deleted the threads that were prior to that where I was talking to him. And so we ended on good terms. And hours later, this video, which is a live video, it's an hour-and-a-half long rant with so many insults are being hurled directly at me and some indirectly. He says that I'm clout chasing and I'm just a local entrepreneur who doesn't understand an SEC filing. He also addresses a few other people indirectly as well. So it wasn't all targeted towards me, but much of it was. I know that local Atlanta entrepreneur comment most certainly beyond a single doubt, especially just hours after we had spoken about a lot of the content of what's going on in this video. He expanded on it, but didn't address it. And his argument was filled with more insults than it was actual information and truths and answers to the questions that I had. And I told him at one point, I'm not even worried about you answering the questions, whatever. Just keep doing your thing. He told me about the Tulsa talk. I said, cool, we'll talk Thursday. But we never made it to Thursday because this is what happens beforehand. And ultimately, my decision is definitely not to invest.
Because you never went through a filing in your life, so you have nothing to compare it to but your limited knowledge, fam. Like I told you, I don't argue. I only debate with my equals. Your limited expertise that's only based on the trust fund your daddy gave you. It's like you in the streets talking about you sell coke, but you don't even know the prices, bro.
This is not the guy to march into the corporate world and march on the Wall Street carrying that attitude, let alone the background. And I'm not knocking him for his background. I'm just saying the obvious is that somebody will along the way. You guys even see a video of mine before that video of his was uploaded where I actually say I'm going to invest in the fund. Obviously, my mind has been changed by now, and you see it as a result of that 1.5 hour long rant that I am finally responding to after all this time. But what I wanted you guys to do with the last 2 videos that I uploaded of him was look at the fact that there's nobody speaking in that video but him. So when people call me a hater, it's just funny to me because I'm looking at the content like there's nobody speaking but Jay Morrison. How am I a hater? Nothing that he is saying in these videos is taken out of context. This is all exactly what he said, exactly the way that he meant it. And I just wanted to isolate a few of those and show you that you can't tell as a follower whether or not he's lying.
Those who have never done it should shut their mouth. If you have never done it in your lifetime, never attempted it, never accomplished it, or even tried and failed it, how dare you comment on what I'm doing? You should be ashamed of yourself. You sound silly and foolish because you have no basis. And the only people I will debate with are my equals. Let me tell you how the Tulsa Real Estate Fund works. The first ever Black-owned, SEC-regulated real estate crowdfund in the history of mankind. First ever Black-owned, SEC-regulated real estate crowdfund in the history of mankind.
And the whole point of me not talking in the videos, letting Jay be the only person speaking in the videos, is to show to you as followers that you don't understand when he is lying to you and when he is not, and that is the issue here. It's one of the issues here. There are several blatant lies that he tells in that video, and if you can't isolate those from the truth that he tells, which he does say several things in that video that are very true, if you can't isolate one from the other, then you need to stop and take a second and really think about it. Really think about it. This is not about black or white. This is not about skin color. It's not about race. If you keep making it about race, then you will be too ignorant to see the facts and lies in front of you. You're basically a Trump supporter. Trump tells several lies a day. He told 3,000 lies in his first year in office. You know the majority of the Republican Party believes every word that he says based on his skin color. They believe everything that Trump says. So you're basically doing the exact same thing when you tell me that I'm a hater in a video where I did not speak and a man is lying to you right in front of your face.
It's just unique to you because you never did it before. Because you didn't do this. And if anyone challenges you in real life or social media, my leader, my teacher, my mentor taught me, if they can't show you an SEC filing of their own for a real estate crowdfund or anything comparable, you tell them they need to be quiet and go learn. They're a student, not a peer. They don't even deserve the conversation. We're providing the first ever opportunity for our community to control our own dollars in an organized, sophisticated, civilized. So for us, we're in a league of our own. We're the first and only. There's none like us, none but us. You should be ashamed of yourself. You sound silly and foolish. We're providing the first ever opportunity for our community to control our own dollars in an organized, sophisticated, civilized, regulated, and transparent way. It never has happened yet.
Something else that he says in this video that is extra false is when he implies that black people have never operated under their own agency at any point in time in history in the United States, that black people have never had their own communities, that black people have never owned their own businesses, it's just the things that he are implying about the black community. If a white man said that to you, you would take it as a slap in the face. Listen to what he's saying word for word. Now, when I make that comment, I hope you don't take it as race baiting. I'm not race baiting. But honestly, ask yourself, if a white man said to you that black people in their entirety have never, even once, operated under their own agency, operated successful communities, operated as civilized human beings to the extent where they can move freely within their own communities and make things happen for themselves. If a white man said it to you, you'd be super offended. You allow yourself to be sold on Jay because of his melanin and your emotional connection to that melanin and the history of it in this country. And if that's what you want to do, that's cool. But that doesn't change statistical information, and that doesn't change facts. It doesn't. And you have to realize that. It doesn't make a lie the truth because somebody looks like you. The first black judge was elected in 1768. Slavery was ratified by the 14th Amendment and ended in 1865, technically, or from a standpoint, rather. You have to know history. Even before the Native Americans were here, there were Aboriginal people there that were driven out and killed by Native Americans. But guess what? They were black people. Some of them still exist in this country to this date. There's not as many of them as you think if you know the story of the Aboriginals, and there's a pretty good chance that you aren't one if you claiming that you are. But that's a story for another day. Even during slavery days, 28% of the black people who lived free, they owned slaves. If you know U.S. history correctly, you know that Florida was not one of the 13 colonies. And the people who lived in Florida for quite some time were black people, Africans, and Native Americans. And if you look up the story of John Horse and the Seminoles, it'll teach you a lot about it. Where they couldn't be penetrated, they couldn't be infiltrated. They tried to sabotage them. They tried to run up. They couldn't do much about them. And so they ended up having a treaty, and they moved John Horse to what is now present day Oklahoma, around that general area. And he lived there for about 10 years in peace with his tribes and his people until, just before the Louisiana Purchase happened, and then they took over the land and killed them, unfortunately. But if you know your history, you understand that there was never a point in time in history where black people didn't function under their own abilities, capacities, agency, whatever. Anthony Johnson was from Angola. He was an African, okay? He went to court and became what people refer to as the first slave owner, which is not really true because he was a slave himself. So you can't be the first slave owner if you were involved in slavery. What used to happen was there was about 7 years of indentured servitude before you were given freedom. You weren't given rights, but you were given freedom. And so there was a population of black people that lived freely. If you own slaves, you have to have a land and somewhere to keep them and something to feed them and some work for them to do. So yeah, a lot of these were black people who were buying their family members, but some of them weren't. You just have to learn your history and understand that black people have been doing all sorts of things that you have no clue of. You have no concept of black history in its true form. And that's the whole point of the white supremacist education system that we've all been subjected to. I'm not going to say that the majority of black people have always been balling. That's obviously not the case. But the reality is that if I wanted to become an astronaut, the only thing stopping me from becoming an astronaut is myself. That says a lot about freedom. That says a lot about opportunities. That says a lot about our capabilities right now today and what we can do if we work together or if we work independently. You don't need a black leader. You don't need a plan. You don't need a savior. So all you people are asking me what's my plan? My plan is personal responsibility. Have you tried it? It just so happens that along with personal responsibility, a byproduct of observing that responsibility in its full effect is you have the ability to teach others. And that is what we should be about. Localized effort, concentrated efforts. If 100 people can give $500 to this business, then 100 people can give $500 to themselves and use that $50,000 to start some kind of localized business, vending machines. 100 of y'all get together, put together $500 and buy some vending machines. How's that? You'll have an instant return. You won't have to wait a year to make a return. Like that, and bam, you're in business, you're making money. There are many, many ways to invest your money on a localized scale, on a centralized scale, and have control over your funds and have control over the outcome.
You certainly haven't seen an economic vehicle like this. Again, we are the first ever in the history. Imagine the chances, the odds of being that and doing that. Again, we are the first ever in the history. Imagine the chances, the odds of being that and doing that. Those who have never done it should shut their mouth. So how can we pull off this magnificent feat, this historical movement? I'm gonna teach you and show you, not debate you, because you don't know any better. You don't have a leg to stand on. You have no argument. You're not a peer. You're a confused student. You're a little boy trying to understand how a man stands, how he stands.
Now let's be honest about all of that. A lot of this stuff is not something that you can say from one grown man to another grown man in a face-to-face situation without some serious N-word stuff going down. So let's be completely clear about that. You can't, the e-thugging is not what's up right now, especially not in this matter, especially not in this context. It's not acceptable. It's not going to get you very far. This shouldn't be somebody you have to say this to. Am I right or am I correct? I'm also going to do a video breaking down the actual SEC report. That's going to be the last time I speak on this topic and this subject matter, because this is absolutely beneath my pay grade, to be honest. And I really don't have the time for these conversations. If you want to invest, go ahead and invest. I'm going to reveal factual information to you, and then I'm going to move on. We're not going to volley back and forth on this. You don't want to walk into the corporate world with this sort of language and speak on things like this in this nature and think that's going to have a positive reflection for yourself, your organization, and the people who you represent. That's not the right way to speak, especially not on these platforms when you are broadcasting yourself.
You have no clue. You're not from the streets. You're not from this culture. You may know business, but you don't know this business. So you're not a peer. You're not an equal. You're a student. For now, you can stay a confused student who watches my moves. You're not a peer here. You're a student. How can you knock another entrepreneur's business model when you have not taken their risk and who have never in their life done what we've done? For all you intellectual fake entrepreneurs, for all the financial experts, I know you never went through an SEC filing because you know it costs more than 15 grand. So how can we pull off this magnificent feat, this historical movement, because some other intellectual friends told them this don't make sense, who also have never done what we've done in this lifetime? Because if they didn't, they would have been first, not us. If you have never done it in your lifetime, never attempted it, never accomplished it, or even tried and failed it, how dare you comment on what I'm doing? You should be ashamed of yourself. You sound silly and foolish. And who have never in their life done what we've done. There's no lies in these verses. I'm not going to debate self-professed intellectuals and entrepreneurs who are not my equals, who are not my peers, who have not done what I've done, who have not been where I've been, who have not created what I've created, have not even attempted to file what I filed. File what I filed. See, these intellectuals, entrepreneurs who never ever filed the SEC filing in their life.
Here's something I want to point out about the whole SEC filing and why we keep coming back to that point, and he keeps bragging on that, which is strange to me because the SEC doesn't back this company, this organization, the Tulsa Real Estate Fund. It's also illegal to imply that the SEC is backing you. I'm not saying that he is, but he definitely keeps bringing up the point that he has an SEC filing, which I should point out again, when you have an SEC filing of this nature, you have to have a secondary company come in that's unrelated to both Jay Morrison and the SEC. An outside auditor comes in and looks at the finances and the prospects of this company, and they make a decision. And that decision was not favorable if you look in the SEC report. There's nobody in the SEC report that's bragging on the SEC report the way that Jay Morrison is. So I don't understand. So he's right about that part. I don't get why he's bragging on the SEC filing so much when I've read the SEC, and the SEC filing isn't bragging on itself at all in any way at all whatsoever. And another thing that I should mention about IPOs when they release on the market, just Dropbox just dropped a few months ago and they were like $30 a share on the public market. This is not on the public market. This is not a stock that you can trade. And so when you do that, you are limiting people's rights as investors. You are limiting their freedom. You don't have a right to liquidity if you can't trade your stock. If you invest in any major company, Kohl's, Petco, and you wanted to take your money out, you could take your money out. With this, you have to convince somebody that they should pay you for your shares. That's the best way to get your money back out of this fund, is convincing somebody else they should pay you for the share. And if he builds something that you don't agree with, that you are morally against, and again, I'm just throwing out examples, not saying he's going to do this. If they build an abortion clinic, if they build a nightclub, if they build a strip club, if they build a gay club, if they build anything that you have conflicts with, I'm not saying that any of you should have a problem with any of that stuff, but I'm just saying it could be anything. If they build a weed farm, if they build a shipping and distribution or manufacturing of weed or products that you don't approve of, if they selling sex toys, if they selling anything that you don't approve of, think about that. There's a lot of markets that you as an investor would not want to get interested in. So when you involve yourself with a deal where you don't have control in terms of where your investment is actually going and what the money is creating, that's sort of problematic, because at what point in the future can you pull your money back out? They got a 5% buyback in the fine print. You have to read the fine print. There's so many things that are not right about this, and it doesn't have anything to do with the SEC filing and how much it costs. Like I said, Dropbox just had an IPO a few months ago, $30 per share. I guarantee you there were almost no investors going, well, I wonder how much they paid for the SEC filing, all of the fees that they had to pay. No, they want to know what they're getting out of the deal. They read the filing itself. The filing itself is what matters, not how much you paid to make it happen. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And by your own logic, if that is your argument, I can't understand it because I didn't file it. By your own logic, no one should invest in this project but you. So that's just a completely ridiculous thing to say as a response that's built into a bunch of flurried insults and just childish remarks.
They must be qualified. Other than that, they can be students. But you have people that are brainwashing you and spitting out slander to the public, misinformed, misguided, and intellectuals. You're apparently not that smart. So how can you compare us with another fund that has no mission, no intent, no focus to do good in your community? How is that comparable?
All right. And so there's another thing is that he says that we're not equal and he will only debate with his equals. So he would not have a debate with me, but he would have a debate with Vlad, who he sees as his equal. Well, I'm just going to summarize this whole equal statement by saying at the end of the interview, you see Vlad show him that there's a different type of equality going on here, because Vlad's not going to invest $500 into his fund. Now, DJ Vlad, in my presumption, is somebody who can set $500 on the fire and never miss it. Again, I'm not race baiting when I point this out, but for people who race matters so much to you in this endeavor, I should point out that I am a black potential investor, and you see how he talked to me. For over an hour and a half, he threw insults and yelled and said things. Well, he wasn't yelling the entire time, but he did begin yelling and going over the top. So me, as a black potential investor, this is how I get treated by Jay Morrison. But a white non-investor, who is Vlad, guess what he gets? He gets $500 worth of shares for free. Jay Morrison just gives it to him. Because they're equal, I guess. So he felt equal in that place. So Vlad, a white person who is not investing, is going to get $500 in free shares because he's equal. But me, a black person, potentially contributing to an opportunity to save the black community, I get yelled at for an hour and a half and insulted because I'm not equal. These are not my words, folks. These are the words of Jay Morrison. You can't call me a hater. I didn't create his actions. You just have to look at what's in front of you and realize sometimes it's not everything it's cracked up to be. You doing this for black family, you did file a bankruptcy where you owe $200,000 to black family. That was your homie, Jay, and you didn't pay him. So again, I'm not hating. This is actual public record. This is actual facts. So if you care about black family so much, you did sell crack to him, and you did cheat black family out of $200,000, and you are on live stream right now ranting at black family, telling me that I'm not equal and my father made me what I am and I don't understand, and that I'm not a man, I'm a little boy. And then you also telling this white dude that he's worth $500 worth of free shares just because. I don't have anything else to say about this. Again, this is not a character assassination. Anybody involved with the Tulsa Real Estate Fund, I wish y'all the best of luck.
Now we all can be hotel owners. We all can own farmland. We all can own parking garages. There's no lies in these verses. If we don't take a shot at this, what is your other option? So don't criticize. Give us the professional courtesy, the professional etiquette. I know what I'm saying makes sense. Again, you don't have to invest with us. This is no pitch. All I ask you to do is support us with cheers, reposts, shares, root us on. To pray for our protection, mine personally, my team, our fund, and our assets. Just pray for us to whatever God you pray to. You don't have to invest anything. Or, if you can't see through all that, just shut up.
And again, this is the last thing I want to point out about this. You can't disrespect Black history in this sense when you take something this deep and you exploit it for a direct profit and you don't directly impact the victims and the families of the legacy you're standing on. It's not cool. It's not cool.
Our fund is named after the historic community in Tulsa, Oklahoma of Black Wall Street that was burned down on June 1st of 1921, 97 years ago.
The use of the name. They have no ties to that name. That's not realistic. I don't care what anybody says. That's grade A red flag for a scam. If you tell me that you are going to start a fund for anything, I don't care what it is. You're going to save wells, you're going to feed hungry children, and you name it after some tragic event that we can all identify with. And those people who suffered through that, the families and the victims who suffered through that are still seeking reparations. They've been in court. You've made $10 million from exploiting that name that you have no ties to. And you can't even donate $25,000 so they can get some lawyers to help the reparation case in court. $50,000 so they can get some, that's not even 1%. $10 million, 25,000, 30,000, 50,000 for some lawyers out of 10 million. That's pennies. That's pennies. That's pennies for the name you exploited that you have no ties to. I don't care what anybody says. That is grade A red flag scam shit. You could have named this anything. Be honest with yourself. If this was named the Riverwood Fund, would any of you have interest in it the way that you do now? Be honest. If this was named the Riverwood Fund, would you be as interested as the Tulsa Fund? Would it capture your attention? The Riverwood Fund, we just doing this for Black history. They could have said that. If you died the way those people in Tulsa died, and your children spend their entire lives fighting in court to get anything, your whole family has to start over from nothing, from absolute nothing. They were given nothing. In fact, some of them were punished for it. Your family was given nothing for all of the heartache, all of the tragedy, all of the hurt, all of the pain. They're giving nothing. They fight for it for over a century. These people are still in court right now. The last report of cases trying to get something back for these victims and these families was in 2017. The one before that is 2014. These people are still in court. After a century, they are still fighting. And you come along and make $10 million off of the name, off of the history, which you don't even quote correctly. He doesn't quote the history of Tulsa correctly at all. At all. So you're out of whack. You're on the wrong side of history and you're using the name to make all of these funds. You have no ties to that name or those victims or those families. Those families are still in court fighting. And out of 10 million, be realistic. What's 50 grand for them to get some lawyers so they can actually achieve reparations? And is what I'm saying that wrong? Put yourself in the shoes of those victims. You died. Your children fight for their whole lives. Somebody comes and makes $10 million off of your tragedy after your children, your grandchildren been in court fighting for a century. Somebody comes and makes $10 million off of your death. They make $10 million off of your death and they don't give a damn dime to your children. But anyway, I don't have anything else to say about these people, man. Best of luck on y'all endeavor. You know, hope all y'all become billionaires. But I'm not investing, man. I'm gonna root you on, but I'm also gonna reveal factual information so that people can look at the factual information, what it is, your character or the deal itself, you know, so they can make an actual assessment, because it's a necessity before you invest this amount of money, especially when you don't have it or if you don't understand the investment world. My final point to point out about the key man clause is he said his response to that is that God chose him. I also like to point out that Jay has stated several times that he doesn't believe in God. So that's a very, very strange thing to say, just for comparison. I'm not hating, I'm just pointing that out. It's factual information.